We're here today to discuss a sweeping, unprecedented, and historically successful operation that my administration has carried out in recent weeks to arrest, prosecute, and permanently remove members of foreign drug cartels from American soil.
3:47 a.m. Texas. A customs officer is dead. A CIA director is exposed. An ambassador exploits immunity. 40 secret shipments. Millions laundered through offshore shadows. This is the gravest breach of U.S. sovereignty in modern history, exposing crime from inside the government.
And on that same day, I also signed an order directing the creation of the Homeland Security Task Force to bring together all federal, state, and local partners to achieve the national policy goal of eliminating the cartel presence in America once and for all.
Everything began in Texas with a routine inspection. Evan Marshall was 31 years old, a low-level federal customs officer, healthy, active, no medical history. During a late shift, he noticed something wrong with a Mexican diplomatic shipment. The paperwork looked clean, but the weight was far too heavy. Evan requested a second inspection. Within minutes, two senior supervisors arrived. Both appeared tense. They did not ask questions. They gave an order. Stand down. This shipment is protected under diplomatic rules. Evan obeyed, but he did not forget. Before ending his shift, he filed an internal report, trusting the system would handle it. 3 weeks later, Evan Marshall was found dead in his apartment. The official cause: sudden cardiac arrest. No autopsy was demanded. No investigation opened. A healthy young man was gone, and the report he wrote quietly disappeared. If you believe Evan Marshall did not die naturally, comment below. The report Evan filed did not disappear completely. It reached Special Agent Mark Ellison, a veteran FBI analyst known for seeing patterns others missed. What alarmed him wasn't the shipment itself, but the name attached to it. Jonathan P. Reeves, former director of the CIA, a man once trusted with America's deepest secrets. Ellison requested surveillance. What followed was disturbing. Unusual visitors, large cash movements, reinforced doors, armed private security rotating in shifts. FBI leadership acted fast. A federal judge approved a no-knock warrant. At dawn, agents surrounded Reeves's Texas residence. As they approached the gate, automatic gunfire erupted. Reeves had hired mercenaries, trained, armed, and ready to kill. A quiet neighborhood turned into a battlefield. Flashbangs exploded. Shields took the first hits. Agents advanced with controlled fire. The firefight lasted nearly 10 minutes. Inside, Reeves was caught burning documents. The search that followed was worse than the gunfight. Beneath the floorboards, 20 kilograms of fentanyl and heroin. In the basement, military rifles, serial numbers were removed. Inside a steel safe, $18 million in cash and gold. Jonathan P. Reeves was handcuffed and led away. The shock inside the FBI was immediate. If a former CIA director had crossed this line, what exactly had Evan Marshall uncovered? A former CIA director? Drugs, weapons, cash. If you believe no former official should be above the law, like video and comment. Yes, the arrest of Jonathan P. Reeves should have ended the story. Instead, it opened a darker one. As FBI teams combed through his devices, a pattern emerged. Organized, deliberate, and far older than anyone expected. Reeves had not recently fallen into corruption. He had built a criminal empire while still serving inside the intelligence community, using his training not to defend the nation, but to hide from it. Financial trails linked him directly to the CJNG cartel in Texas, revealing a partnership stretching back years. He provided strategy. They provided manpower. And together they expanded into fields far more brutal than narcotics, human trafficking, organ harvesting, and illegal weapons shipments crossing state and international lines. But the most disturbing discovery came from the buried report communications dug out of encrypted folders. Reeves had a partner with diplomatic protection, Ambassador Alejandro Cruz Vega of Mexico. More than 40 diplomatic shipments had entered the United States under Vega's authority, each labeled cultural materials, each weighing nearly 900 kilograms, far beyond any legitimate cargo. Money was laundered through offshore accounts in Panama, Cyprus, and the British Virgin Islands. A shell company, Meridian Global Logistics, acted as a silent hub with no employees and no physical office, only a stream of untraceable transfers. Reeves had also placed loyal contacts throughout local agencies, a county sheriff, a DEA technician, and several administrative staff who quietly cleared paperwork. This was no cartel outpost. It was a protected network, one that reached from Texas ports to foreign embassies. And the FBI now understood they were not facing criminals hiding from the system. They were facing criminals hiding inside it. Diplomatic immunity was used as a shield for crime. If you believe immunity should never protect criminals, comment on the end immunity. Investigators soon realized the true center wasn't Reeves. It was Ambassador Alejandro Cruz Vega, protected by a foreign flag and abusing immunity to move 40 massive diplomatic shipments offshore. The FBI knew the truth but couldn't touch him. Diplomacy has become a shield for criminals. A decision had to be made at the highest level. In a classified meeting, federal agencies presented their findings. The evidence was overwhelming. The danger was immediate. And for the first time in modern U.S. history, the government agreed to do the unthinkable. Revoke diplomatic immunity before an operation. The clock moved quickly after that. At 3:47 a.m., under the cover of darkness, FBI tactical teams and a Marine Rapid Response Unit deployed around the Mexican diplomatic compound. Marines formed the outer ring, silent, disciplined, blocking every exit. FBI agents advanced toward the main entrance with breaching gear, night vision optics, and sealed warrants unprecedented in scope. The assault began with a deafening crack. A breaching charge tore open the reinforced doorway, sending dust rolling across the courtyard. Marines moved in with precision, securing the perimeter as FBI teams surged into the embassy interior. Gunfire erupted instantly. Inside, private contractors hired by Vega, heavily armed, trained for conflict, opened fire from elevated positions. Bullets ricocheted off marble walls. Flashbangs burst like white lightning. Agents advanced in tight formation, shields absorbing the first shots as they pushed deeper down narrow corridors. The fight lasted minutes but felt longer. Room by room, floor by floor, agents cleared the compound. They found barricaded doors, destroyed hard drives, and hastily abandoned workstations. Downstairs, a reinforced steel door guarded the basement. A second charge blew it apart. What waited below was worse than any firefight. Rows of medical coolers, organs sealed for transport, stainless steel tables coated with chemical residue, pressing equipment, powder bricks, pallets wrapped for shipment, enough fentanyl, meth, and heroin to flood multiple states for months, and in a concealed chamber at the back, $67 million in bundled cash, hidden behind a false wall. On the third floor, Ambassador Vega was found attempting to escape through a service corridor. He was restrained immediately. No flag, no treaty, no immunity left to shield him. At that same hour, coordinated raids hit cartel safe houses, storage yards, and financial fronts across Texas. The network collapsed on multiple fronts in a single night. For the first time, diplomacy had fallen to criminal consequences, and the war that had remained invisible finally became visible to the nation. When the final gunshots faded and the embassy compound fell silent, the investigation entered a new and far more revealing phase. The battle had ended, but the truth was only beginning to surface. What agents discovered inside that building and across the linked locations raided the same night exposed a system of criminal operations so entrenched, so carefully protected that many inside the FBI struggled to accept how long it had remained hidden. The basement of the embassy became the first focal point. Rows of coolers, each marked with medical transport stickers, were cataloged and opened under strict forensic protocol. Inside were human organs, kidneys, livers, corneas preserved for rapid transit. The former CIA director documentation recovered from a desk nearby traced the destination of each shipment. Illegal clinics in South America, private buyers in Europe, and underground networks operating far from oversight. It was organized, profitable, and shockingly routine. Next came the narcotics, industrial-grade pressing machines, ventilation systems disguised as maintenance equipment, and chemical drums filled with precursor materials. The quantities seized, fentanyl, meth, and heroin, were enough to supply cartel distribution routes for months. Agents realized they were not looking at a temporary operation. This was a fully functional production center built in the one place no federal agency was allowed to inspect. But the discoveries extended far beyond the embassy walls. Simultaneous raids across Texas revealed the outer layers of the structure Reeves and Ambassador Vega had built. In a rural storage facility, agents found shipping manifests matching diplomatic shipments, each carefully coded to disguise true contents. In a suburban warehouse, they located binders filled with employment records of individuals trafficked across the border, many of whom had vanished shortly after arrival. Their names were linked to clinics, farms, factories, and private estates, places that had quietly consumed vulnerable human lives without attracting attention. Electronic evidence was even more disturbing. Hundreds of encrypted messages recovered from seized laptops detailed an international trade network with branches reaching into Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. Some messages referenced deliverables, others fresh material, terminology that stripped victims of humanity and turned them into commodities. The scale was industrial. The tone was cold, and the system had been allowed to operate because the primary gateway, Vega's embassy, was protected by diplomatic law. Financial analysis uncovered the architecture that kept this machine running. Money moved through layers of offshore entities, Panama, Cyprus, the British Virgin Islands, before reappearing in the United States as real estate, consulting fees, and security contracts. At the center sat Meridian Global Logistics, a company with no payroll, no warehouse, no employees. It existed only to route millions of dollars between criminal partners who believed they were untouchable. What shocked investigators most was not the complexity, but the simplicity. The network thrived because everyone believed diplomatic immunity was impenetrable. With Vega in custody and Reeves already behind bars, the structure was collapsing. But the damage it had inflicted on communities, on families, on trust in the system was only beginning to be understood. This was not just crime. It was infiltration. It was corrosion. And the consequences were far from over. As the evidence continued to unfold, the FBI realized the criminal network was not just a sophisticated operation. It was a wound that had been bleeding into American communities for years. What investigators uncovered went far beyond drugs, money, or corrupt officials. It exposed a silent erosion of safety that families across Texas had felt long before anyone understood why. The first signs appeared in medical examiner reports. Cases flagged as natural causes suddenly took on new meaning when matched with Reeves' encrypted communications. Young workers, recent immigrants, and low-income residents had died without explanation. Deaths dismissed as heart failure, dehydration, or workplace accidents. Yet, their names surfaced repeatedly in seized documents tied to trafficking pathways and organ supply lists. They were not random losses. They were casualties of a hidden economy that treated human life as inventory. Communities near border towns had long reported rising disappearances, particularly among vulnerable groups. Parents described children who crossed the border seeking opportunity and never called home again. Shelters noticed missing residents who had left with job recruiters promising quick cash. For years, these reports were handled separately. Local police filing missing person notices. Numbers assumes human trafficking. Health departments noting unexplained deaths. Only now, with the evidence mapped out, did the FBI see the full picture. The network fed on the most defenseless members of society. In suburban neighborhoods, the consequences took a different form. Synthetic drugs diplomatic immunity exposed produced inside Vegas embassy had flooded towns with no cartel presence before. Hospital admissions for fentanyl overdoses had surged quietly. Treatment centers saw younger patients. School resource officers reported narcotics far more potent than anything previously circulating. What looked like a broad national drug trend was in fact the result of a supply chain engineered from within diplomatic walls. Even law enforcement agencies had been compromised. In interviews conducted after the raids, several officers admitted they had stopped filing suspicious reports because nothing ever happened after. Others confessed that they trusted Reeves' reputation, believing a former CIA director could not possibly be involved in wrongdoing. This misplaced trust allowed entire counties to be manipulated, inspections to be bypassed, and victims to be moved without anyone connecting the dots. Beyond the physical harm, the emotional toll was profound. Community leaders spoke of neighborhoods living with a sense of unease, families locking doors earlier, parents warning teenagers not to take night shifts, residents afraid to report strange activity near warehouses or rural properties. What they feared wasn't crime alone. It was the growing suspicion that the system meant to protect them had failed. Faith communities, immigrant groups, and local nonprofits stepped into the vacuum, offering what support they could. But they too felt the weight of betrayal. Many had trusted embassy-sponsored programs and cultural exchanges, unaware that some were being used as fronts to mask illicit movements. The most painful realization came when investigators reviewed the timeline. This network had been operating for nearly a decade. For years, communities had lived with unexplained tragedies. Unaware, they were symptoms of a larger hidden machinery run by powerful men protected by titles, positions, and international law. The FBI now faced the truth. Restoring safety would require more than arrests. It would require rebuilding trust. One family, one neighborhood, one shaken community at a time. And the deeper they looked, the more they understood that the true victims of this network were not only the ones who vanished. They were entire communities that never knew they were under attack. With the arrests made and the public finally aware of the scale of corruption, the FBI's focus shifted to a far more difficult question. How had this network survived for so long? It wasn't enough to seize drugs, shut down safe houses, or place a former CIA director and a foreign ambassador in handcuffs. The deeper issue was structural. Something inside the system had cracked, and no one had noticed until bodies, bank trails, and diplomatic crates told the story. Internal reviews began immediately. Federal agencies launched parallel audits, combing through years of reports, tips, and field complaints. What they found was not a lack of information, but a lack of connection. Pieces of the truth had been reported dozens of times. Isolated incidents in border towns, unexplained deaths in county hospitals, shipments with mismatched weights, anonymous tips about warehouses operating at night. Each agency saw fragments. None saw the whole pattern. That failure had allowed Reeves and Vega to operate freely. It had allowed cartel money to infiltrate county offices. It had allowed human beings to vanish without alarm. Senior officials faced the grim reality. The system had not been outsmarted. It had been outpaced. Criminals had adapted faster than institutions built to stop them. Congressional committees demanded answers. Governors requested briefings. Community leaders asked why every warning sign had been brushed aside. Yet, accountability was complicated. Some failures were due to negligence. Others were due to trust. Trust placed in the wrong people. Reeves's former title had granted him a shield of credibility that masked his crimes for years. Supervisors dismissed whistleblowers because they knew him. Local officers ignored red flags because Washington must have approved it. A culture of difference had become a weapon in the wrong hands. The FBI acknowledged another uncomfortable truth. Evan Marshall should never have died. His report should not have been buried. His questions should not have been punished. His life should not have been the price for uncovering a crime embedded in diplomacy. In the wake of the raids, the agency began rewriting protocols for interagency cooperation. A new system was proposed to detect embassy breached anomalies across customs, intelligence, and diplomatic channels, so no single report could be quietly dismissed. Again, community reporting lines were expanded. Medical examiners were given new guidelines for identifying deaths linked to trafficking and chemical agents. For the first time, diplomatic shipments would undergo weight tracking audits, even when the contents remained protected. But rebuilding trust would take more than new rules. Town halls across Texas filled with families demanding reassurance. Ministers, teachers, and small business owners spoke of fear. Not fear of cartels, but fear that institutions had been too blind, too slow, or too willing to look away. Some asked whether similar networks existed elsewhere. Others wondered how many years it would take for their communities to heal from harm they never saw coming. Through it all, investigators kept their focus on the names still unsolved, files labeled pending, bank accounts still active, associates who had fled before the raids. The operation had collapsed, but remnants of the network remained. And in quiet conference rooms long after midnight, agents asked the same question as the public. If this could happen in Texas, with respected officials, diplomatic protections, and federal oversight, Where else could it be happening? The answer was not yet known, but the responsibility to find it had only just begun. What this case ultimately revealed was not just a criminal network, but a warning. For years, Americans were told that the greatest threats came from the outside, from borders, from foreign enemies. But this investigation proved something far more uncomfortable. Sometimes the most dangerous breaches begin inside the very institutions meant to protect the nation. A former CIA director, a foreign ambassador, diplomatic immunity, titles that were supposed to represent trust, law, and international order turned into shields for crime. This was not a failure of American values. It was a betrayal of them. And yet, this story does not end in darkness. Because when the truth finally surfaced, it was American institutions that acted. It was the FBI analysts who followed patterns others ignored. It was federal agents who stood their ground under gunfire. It was U.S. Marines who secured the perimeter when diplomacy collapsed into criminality. It was judges who signed warrants without fear of titles or former power. This operation sent a message, one that matters deeply in a divided world. No position is higher than the law. No flag can permanently shield crime. No former office grants lifelong immunity. That is the lesson. A free society survives not because corruption never appears, but because it is confronted when discovered. This case also reminds us why accountability matters in politics, why transparency matters, why institutions must be questioned, audited, and corrected, not blindly trusted. Power without oversight rots. Authority without consequences spreads harm. And when citizens stop asking questions, corruption grows comfortable. Evan Marshall asked a question. He trusted the system. And though the cost was devastating, his actions ultimately exposed a machine that had been poisoning communities for nearly a decade. The fight now moves forward not just in courtrooms, but in policy oversight and public awareness, because national security is not only about borders and weapons. It is about integrity, and that responsibility belongs to all of us. If you believe no official should ever be above the law, comment justice below. If you believe America's institutions must be protected from corruption, no matter how high it reaches, comment on the system. And if you stand with the men and women of the FBI, federal law enforcement, and the U.S. military who risk their lives to uphold the Constitution, like this video and share it, because silence protects corruption and vigilance protects the Republic.